Hey everybody, so this week we're going to talk about adult services. This is a program that I used to give for the Library of Michigan's beginning workshop, which they have now transferred over to the Niche Academy, so it's not a thing I do like I used to present at their conference every year. But it covers so many different aspects of adult services that I figured I would just record that program as I used to give it at that workshop. A lot of these topics have individual chapters throughout the course. A lot of these topics are also youth services topics. It's not that these are things that only adult services librarians do. It's just that when I gave this presentation for the Library of Michigan, they asked for an introduction to adult services, and these were the topics that were included. It's pretty well rounded with all the different topics that we cover. So let's go ahead and dive in. Part of adult services that I want to talk about is reader advisory. This is sort of a basic service within adult services where patrons come to a reference desk and they ask a librarian for a reading suggestion. They might just say, "So what's a good book?" And of course, what's a good book is sort of in the eye of the beholder. So it's a real art and skill to talk to people and give them reading suggestions that they will like based on what they're in the mood for or what they have liked in the past or something new maybe that they want to try. So my suggestion is to have a go-to list of maybe 3 to 5 authors that fall into each major category so that no matter what kind of thing somebody is in the mood for, you have some go-to authors that you can recommend. So if someone says, I don't know, historical romance, you could suggest Julia Quinn, Lisa Kleypas, Mary Ballow. If they like cozy mysteries, you could suggest Laura Childs, Donna Andrews, MC Beaton. You know, any kind of category you can come up with, just list some authors that fit in that area. Espionage thrillers, you could suggest Daniel Silva, Robert Ludlum, maybe Tom Clancy. Medical thrillers, Tess Gerritsen, Robin Cook, Michael Palmer. So just sort of, you don't have to read everything as a librarian, but you do have to be familiar with what's out there and what kind of appeal factors go with what, basic authors. Daniel Silva pretty much always writes espionage thrillers. He writes spy novels. And he's very popular. So being able to talk about popular authors that people like, whether you personally read in that category or not, will really help you to do reader advisory. There are also some databases that are available that make reader advisory much easier to do. Books and Authors is a database provided by Gale, the company Gale. Novelist is an EBSCO database. You can also use freebies if the library where you work doesn't subscribe to the pay databases. You could try freebies like Goodreads, which has a feature called Listopia. There's Library Thing. There's the Library Reads list that comes out every month. YourNextRead.com is a good one. So there are resources out there to help you do reader advisory. And in addition, I want to talk about something that I like to call subject advisory. So sometimes people are sort of into a subject and they don't care if the material is fiction or nonfiction, if it's a movie, if it's an audiobook, if it's a magazine. They're just interested in a subject. And so, for example, if someone asks a question about, maybe pirates, you could suggest fiction books about pirates, nonfiction about the history of pirates, movies about pirates, music, maybe soundtrack to Pirates of the Caribbean. You could suggest video games, audiobooks, any kind of magazine article on the topic. So to think of reader advisory in terms of subjects across formats is an interesting way to look at reader advisory. Part of adult services is another basic one. It's reference service. People have questions, librarians have answers. This is one of my favorite parts of adult services. When I was in library school, and I graduated in 1999, so the program has changed quite a bit since then, but I did go to Wayne State, and I took what we called the reference services concentration in the program because I just loved reference so much, and I still do. Being on the reference desk is my favorite place to be. Back in the day before the internet was, readily available on people's phones, it was one of my favorite things to do was to settle bets with people. They would call in from a party or a bar or a restaurant and say, I'm having this discussion with my friend. He thinks whatever, I think something else. Can you give us the answer? Can you settle a bet? It's always super fun to do that. And people can ask for materials on pretty much any kind of topic. So the variety is the other thing that I love about reference service. You just never know what the next person is going to ask. Reference service includes helping people learn to do research and learn to evaluate sources. So it's not always just ready reference, which is just answering a question, giving an answer. Sometimes it's helping people do the research to find the answers on their own. And you learn to sort of read people and either just ask them, do you want to learn how to find the answer, or do you just want me to give you the answer? You sort of, like I said, learn to read people on whether or not they want one or the other. Or you can tell if they're doing a school assignment, probably you're not going to want to just give them the answer. You're going to want to show them how to find the answer as well. I like to think of every question as an opportunity to teach people about library, resources and evaluating sources and things like that. Reference service is helping people use resources in the deep web, so beyond just a Google search. Libraries have databases, and we know how to search government agency databases and other, public information sources that a pretty good Google search still will not find. You're not searching library subscription paid databases when you do a Google search. And so, one of the points I like to make when people ask me, aren't libraries being replaced by Google, is that we are aware of so many sources beyond just Google, beyond the basic, visible web. We know how to search the deep web and find sources way beyond what anyone's going to find on their own. So that's one of the values of a librarian for reference service. So sometimes you're not familiar with the topic people are asking about. You don't even know what the thing is. Is it a person? Is it a thing? Is it a place? It's a word you don't even know. So once you sort of break down what category it falls into at all, and maybe you do use Google for something like that, or Wikipedia, just to sort of put it in a category as a starting point. So referral is an answer. So ask yourself when you're really kind of in a pickle figuring out the answer to a question, who would have the answer to that question, and go to them. Referral is a major part of reference service. You don't get to choose what kinds of reference questions you will or won't answer. We're there to help people find answers to any question that they may have, even if we don't like the topic, if it's political or religious or any kind of social issue that makes you uncomfortable personally. You have to learn to set that aside and help people find whatever answer that they are looking for. I know that there's a reference services class that you can take, and I hope that you do, because it's so fun to talk about this stuff and to learn how to handle those questions that maybe make you uncomfortable. But keep in mind for now that referral is an answer. So you have to at least provide referral to every question that you get, whether you have the answer or whether you have access to the resources that would have the answer. If you can refer them to an agency, an organization, a company, anything to get that answer, that's fine. Referral is an answer. Okay, so let's talk about collection management, which again is a huge topic that I'm not going to cover in one slide here. But collection management is a core piece of adult services. And what I like to say is that as reference librarians, we all use the entire library's collection. So even if you are assigned a certain collection to manage. So in my library, I manage the adult nonfiction 500s, the 900s, the biographies, and the serials collection. So periodicals, magazines, things like that. So those are the collections that I'm in charge of maintaining and managing, but all of the librarians use my collections as much as I do. So you want to not get it, don't get in the habit of thinking of them as your collections or getting territorial about your collections, because everyone uses it to provide reference and to provide reader advisory to the public. And of course, the public use the collections as well. So we manage a collection for the benefit of others. So you always want to be open to suggestions from other librarians. You want to be, of course, open to suggestions for materials from patrons. And I also want to ask you to keep in mind that collection management includes all formats, not just books. You have to manage DVDs and audiobooks and ebooks, and all the different things that libraries collect have to be managed. You'll also notice that I like to use the term collection management versus collection development. Collection development is a valid term and it's fine. But when we're talking about overall maintenance and management of a collection, we're talking about the entire collection life cycle. We don't just select materials and then weed them. That's not collection development or collection management. We have to keep in mind that you select them, they're acquired, they're cataloged, they're processed, they're barcoded and linked, they're used by the public, they're shelved by the pages, then they're used again, and then they're shelved again. And the cycle continues. Sometimes items need to be repaired, relabeled, recataloged. Mistakes happen that have to be fixed. To truly manage a collection means to make it as useful as it can be. So patrons can find it and use it. So the staff, the other librarians can find your materials and use them. The collection has to be managed throughout that whole life cycle. Development implies growth, which implies selection, which is only one piece of managing a full collection. I myself and a librarian that works with me, Mary Kelly, wrote a book called Making a Collection Count. And we go into big detail about the collection life cycle and collection management in general. So if you have a chance, check that out. For now, that's all I want to say about collection management as it pertains to adult services. Library programming are events that are hosted by the library, usually at no cost to the public, although that's not always true. I will get on my soapbox for just a second and caution you to not call things free. I really, really don't like it when I see library marketing that says a program is free, it's free, it's free. Because guess what? Nothing is free. We should take every opportunity to remind patrons that they paid for these services when they paid their taxes, that there's value in library millages and the taxes that they pay to cover library services, because they get all these services and programs. They get, collections, computers, everything that the library offers. The building itself is not free, and that includes programming. So you might say at no extra cost, that's great, but programs aren't free. So we do programming to help the library meet its mission. We do everything to help the library meet its mission, but programming, it enhances other services. For example, my library participated in a program by the Detroit Institute of the Arts called Inside Out. There were community events put on by the DIA and the library. We bought materials in the collection that had to do with the Inside Out program. We were buying books about the author that was featured, which was Homer, I believe was the author. And so they put a piece on our front porch that people could look at the artwork. They could come in and check out books about the author. They could attend programs put on by the DIA. And so now is this whole holistic library service thing where events are tied right in with the building because we had the artwork on our porch. They're tied right in with the collection. We had links on our webpage, so now there's a technology link. So we do programming to enhance other services and to help the library meet its mission, whether that's lifelong learning or the entertainment needs of the community. Programming creates cultural opportunities for our community, which is always, a good thing. We have programs that market library services, that market library projects, technology, collections. We have programs about how to use Melcat, so we have a program about how to use a library service. That's just an example. There are multi-generational programs. There are book-related programs like book clubs, author visits. Sometimes authors will do a Skype program, so you can have people show up and sort of do an interactive Skype event with an author. That's kind of cool. You can make crafts out of old books that you've weeded. That's kind of neat. You can hold book talks. We also do programming around other, like national events, like Money Smart Week. We have a week of financial related programs. There's National Library Week. There's a book called Chase's Calendar of Events that's super good way to find out if it's National Ice Cream Day or, I don't know, National Pizza Day or whatever it may be. You can tie programming or displays even in with things that you find in Chase's Calendar of Events. So at my library, we've done health events, financial events, philosophy events, film clubs, music, concerts. We do cultural and ethnic celebrations like Chinese New Year and the Day of the Dead. Those are always fun to do. We also offer programs that are made possible through the National Endowment for the Humanities and National Endowment for the Arts, which are sponsored by the Michigan Humanities Council. Michigan Notable Books is an organization, so sometimes you can get grants from these places to hold different book-related programs or cultural programs as well. So that's another way to look at programming. Outreach takes the library into the community. The library always wants to be a part of the community. We contribute to solving community problems. We enhance the community as a great place to live. So we want to take the library into the community. That's called outreach. You can do outreach at retirement homes and senior living facilities. We've gone to senior centers and other kinds of social centers. Churches, synagogues, temples, any kind of religious institution you can do outreach at because the people who attend are people in the community. You can have booths at farmers markets and local festivals. My library offers a service called home delivery. So people who are shut-ins who just cannot come to the library if they're homebound, or even people who are temporarily homebound. Maybe they're immobile from a medical situation. Maybe they broke a leg or had recent surgery, and so for 6 weeks they just can't get out. We will deliver materials to their homes. We'll check it out to them and deliver it right to them. New babies, parents of new babies, it's just difficult to get out. Maybe it's temporary. Other people, maybe it's permanent. They just don't have a way to get out of their homes easily. We call it home delivery, and like I said, we'll check materials out and bring them right to people's homes. So that's an outreach service that we offer. You can also partner with community centers, cultural centers, recreation centers, businesses like banks and gyms, restaurants, grocery stores. You could partner for outreach with any of these institutions. All right, let's talk about technology. There is technology programming. You can teach computer classes. My library considers basic computer classes to be a core skill that we want to offer to people. So we teach classes in computer basics, word processing basics. We teach basic Excel. Sometimes we do some higher level classes on things like cloud computing or computer security and things like that. We have we've hosted Fix-It clinics. We have every other week, my library offers drop-in tutoring, and we have National Honor Society high school students that offer the tutoring. And so these are pretty savvy, smart high school kids that will tutor anyone who shows up on whatever it is they want to know. So they help people use new phones, they help them download ebooks, they help them set up an email address, whatever it may be. They have drop-in tutoring. People could just come to the library and work out a problem that they're having. So also for technology duties in adult services include supporting library technology. So anything that the library offers that's technology oriented, like Overdrive eBooks. There's a service called Hoopla, which is streaming movies, music, ebooks, audiobooks, comics, things like that. Flipster, we have our downloadable magazines. My library offers Windows 10. You could have a class on Windows 10. Cloud storage, social media, any service that people can use at the library or through the library. In my library, it's up to all librarians, but a lot of these questions do come through adult services to help people use them. All right, let's talk about tax. Some people don't like tax season. I am not one of those people. I actually really like tax season at the library. People come to the library for their tax forms. We don't worry so much about giving tax advice. None of us are CPAs. We don't give tax advice. But a lot of times people just need your basic 1040 EZ form, and you can tell from talking to them. They don't own a home or have children or own a business or any kind of crazy thing. If it's just a high school student with a part-time job, I probably will suggest to them that they try the 1040 EZ form. That is not tax advice. I'm not telling them how to fill out the form. We always add, if you find you have forms that don't fit on the EZ, come back and we'll give you a long form, the 1040. That's not tax advice. That's just being helpful. That's using the resources available to you to help them figure out which form that they need. Library program for tax forms. These days, the IRS only makes really basic forms even available at libraries. So we don't get all the schedules and all the numbered forms that we used to get. We get the 1040, the A, and the EZ, and the instructions for those 3 forms. That's it. That's all we get at the library that are provided to us. Now, of course, on the irs.gov website, we can print anything that people need, and they will tell you. Very often they know the title of the form, like, capital gains or whatever it may be. All you have to do is search the IRS website to figure out which form it is and, print it out for them or help them print it. During tax season, you could set up a kiosk for printing of tax forms. So many people e-file these days that it's just not as big a deal as it used to be, but there are still a lot of people that come to the library looking for actual tax forms, and it's just not a big deal to help them print whatever it is they may need. My library, we're fortunate to be able to give them 1 free copy of any tax form that they need, and then they need to use the photocopy machine and pay for copies. But we'll give anybody 1 free copy of pretty much whatever. We don't print entire 1040 instruction booklets. That's 50 pages, 70 pages, something like that. If they just need the tax table, which is pretty commonly what they want from within the 1040 instruction form, you know what? We'll just go to the tax table page and print out whichever page of it that they need. We'll set them up on the kiosk to browse the instruction booklet or any of the publications that are published by the IRS. So they have access to all this stuff, whether they need to print it or not. My library also partners with the AARP, and we provide space for the AARP to help prepare taxes for seniors and low-income residents. They make an appointment and they show up, and an AARP person will do their taxes for them. It's a fantastic, great service. Serving new Americans is definitely an adult service within adult services. Services for immigrants include, immigration information, citizenship, test prep for the citizenship test. Passport services are sometimes offered in libraries. In my library, we only help people get the application for passports. We don't have any other services beyond that, but there are libraries out there that will take passport photos and, submit the forms and help them fill out the form and all kinds of things. There is, at my library, we offer an English language learners discussion group, meets every Monday. We have literacy council volunteers, so they're trained volunteers, people who are trained by the Literacy Council in Plymouth to run the discussion groups. And we have an ESL collection, English as a Second Language. There are more ideas on the International Federation of Library Associations webpage. That's ifla.org. They have ideas for public libraries there. And also IMLS, the Institute of Museum and Library Services, has national initiatives for serving new Americans. So there's more ideas on their websites as well. Social work is an interesting thing to talk about as an adult service. So people come to the reference desk and they just need help. Sometimes they do not have the skills to apply for the Michigan Bridges program, which is where you get assistance for, bridge cards for food assistance, utilities, getting your utilities paid, all the different kinds of help that people need through the Michigan Bridges program. Sometimes they just need help filling out the form and signing up. Other times they just need a computer to make it happen. Other times they really do need assistance because they don't know how to use a computer. And so maybe we will suggest that they take a computer class as well, but we'll help them as much as we can to actually get their information in the computer so that they can start getting the assistance that they need. We also keep available at our reference desk ready lists of shelters for the homeless and shelters for domestic abuse victims. When people need that kind of help, they don't have time for you to Google it and figure out what's available in your community. So we keep phone numbers for food pantries, like I said, homeless shelters, domestic abuse shelters, rehabilitation centers, any kind of quick help that people would need. Of course, they can also call 411 if their community has 411 available. That is widely available in Michigan. They can get help there. The United Way helps with this kind of thing. So just knowing where to refer people for any kind of social help that they may need is interesting. Okay, so genealogy falls under adult services in my library. We subscribe to the Ancestry Library Edition database, so people can use that. We help them use different indexes, like the Social Security Death Index. We help them search the census. We help them look for vital records. There are Latter-day Saints, LDS, family history libraries, so we refer people to them as needed. We refer to local and state genealogy societies. We have magazines in our collection like Family Tree Magazine and NGS, the National Genealogical Society magazine. We hold genealogy programs, how-to programs. How to use FamilySearch.org is coming up at my library this fall. I've seen libraries that hold research blitz days or hold field trips to the Library of Michigan or to a family history library. I think those are really cool ideas for genealogy services in libraries. My library is a small business development center, which is a designation that you can get. You are required to have certain titles in your collection and a certain number of titles in your business collection. You're required to hold a certain number of public programs per year on business topics. So we are a small business development center. We also offer SCORE counseling. I forget what SCORE stands for, but SCORE counselors are business people. Often they're retired business people who volunteer, but sometimes they're still working. They use meeting space in our library to hold one-on-one consultations with entrepreneurs to help them set up a business plan, or set up a franchise, or to set up a second location for a business, to do any kind of business related thing. You can get counseling from SCORE counselors, and my library offers space for those consultations to take place. You can also partner with the Chamber of Commerce in your community or the Downtown Development Authority to hold workshops on business topics. Anything from business taxes or management, marketing, hiring and firing, any kind of business topic. Those programs are really well attended in my library. Also in this category, we offer databases like Demographics Now, Reference USA, Business Insights, and Business Decision. So all of those except for Reference USA are offered through the Michigan eLibrary. My library also subscribes directly to Reference USA. We also have investing materials like Value Line and Morningstar. We have Value Line in print and Morningstar in database form, but both of them are available in both formats. So business services are so popular. Parenting is an interesting category because parents are adults, right? So we serve them through adult services, but we also serve them through youth services. So in my library, we have a parenting collection in the youth department. So they are books for adults on topics like potty training, sleeping, eating, sibling rivalry, how to introduce a new baby to the family, homework help and study habits, setting up IEPs for special needs children. Those are all topics that are in our parenting collection. So it's an adult service because the materials are for adults, but we find that sometimes parents have a hard time getting out of the children's department. If they bring their children with them, they're in the children's department. So we make these materials available in the places where parents spend a lot of their time in the library and will find them easily. My library also offers what we call Born to Read baby bags. So if you have a new baby, we offer a Born to Read bag, and there's all kinds of information about the library in there. We give them a free board book. We give them one of the library canvas bags, and then some various information about story time and how to read to your children, early literacy information, things like that. And as I mentioned, we also do home delivery for new parents or somebody with a sick child. If your materials are due and you can't renew them because maybe someone's waiting for it, so the system won't let you renew it, you're doing your very best, but if you just can't get to the library, we'll come and get your stuff for you. A new category is emerging adults, and these are roughly 18 to 25-year-olds. And the idea is that we have services for children and teens and parents and adults and seniors, but we lose that 18 to 25-year-old age group at the library because either they don't have children yet, or they're in college and they just don't have time for pleasure reading or anything the library offers to them. So we want to make sure that we have services that are relevant and needed by this emerging adults category, and of interest to that age group as well, to that demographic. So my library offers a book discussion that takes place in a local brewery. It's called Books on Tap, and it takes place at Liberty Street Brewing in Plymouth. 18 to 25-year-olds love to hang out in breweries. That's a generalization, of course. Not all 18 to 25-year-olds like breweries, but people who are looking to meet other adults in that age group, it's a good place to hang out, whether they drink or not. It doesn't matter. It's a book club that any age can attend it. We find that the average age of the attendees of that particular book club are a bit younger. They are young 20s for the most part. My library also offers adult Nerf wars, which is kind of interesting. So we have an after hours program every couple of months where adults play Nerf, capture the flag with Nerf guns. It's really fun. And again, it seems to be the young 20s who are attending it. So that's been another sort of way to offer a program for the emerging adults group. We are starting to offer more programs in this area, life skills and adulting programs. So we're having one this fall on personal finance. It's called Budget Boot Camp, I think is what we called it. So Adulting 101, Budget Boot Camp. And it's for people who have never had to, get a bank loan or how to get a mortgage, how to balance your checkbook, how to keep a monthly budget, how to know how much money you have when you're still paying off student loans, how to really make a budget that will work when you are buying your first home or paying rent for the first time, and still be able to have a life. We also offer programs on, fun things like decorating small spaces like apartments or maybe car repair. Maybe you own your first car when you're between 18 to 25-ish. Cooking for one is an interesting, or cooking for two even, is a good program for that demographic. We have considered holding mock interviews, so just a generic job interview where you ask, kind of generic questions just to get people to practice giving an interview. Okay, next category is low vision. We have at my library equipment like magnifiers that people can check out. We have an Optelec, which is a closed circuit TV where you can put something under it and it magnifies the item on a screen. We offer monthly low vision information sessions, so it's a once a month program. It used to be called a support group, but the group didn't want to be thought of as a support group. They just wanted it to be called an information session. So we have speakers each month, and the group shares with each other on different topics. We also offer applications for libraries for the blind, whether it's at the national level or the county level, depending on what your community has to offer. We provide the applications for those services. This is a great example of another holistic library service. Displays highlight collections. They point patrons to programs. You can include bookmarks that have web links on them. You can point people to a Pathfinder on your website on a certain subject. You can highlight a database. You can highlight a local business in a display. They make the library more fun. They make the library more homey. They make the library relevant and point out services and materials and programs that maybe people didn't know that you offered. They also connect the library to community services and partnerships that you may have. So displays are a fun part of adult services. Fun part of youth services for that matter, and teen services. But they are certainly part of adult services. I went one screen too far. Well, my screen is weird and now I can't go back. So I'm just going to talk quickly about volunteers, which was the previous slide. This may or may not fall under adult services in your library, but in my library, adult volunteers do some minor shelving, like they help us catch up after a holiday closure. If we're closed for 4th of July, gosh, the next day that we're open is just everything that got returned that didn't get put back that day, so we end up with a lot of stuff to go back on the shelf. So volunteers are invaluable for helping us get, simple things like picture books or movies back on the shelf quickly. We get volunteer help for special programs, like we have a big Star Wars Reads Day event every year. We're having a Harry Potter birthday party this summer. You won't be hearing this until the fall, but it's actually July 14th today, so that program isn't happening for 2 more weeks. But we use volunteer help for big events like that. And they hand out brochures at the programs. They greet people at the door and let them know what's going on at the library. They, keep the refreshment table stocked, different things like that. We get so much volunteer help at my library. So many people want to volunteer, which is amazing. That's not a complaint at all, but we don't have enough work for both the volunteers and our employees. And of course, we want people to have jobs in our community, so we don't want to just give a job to a volunteer that we could pay someone to do. Again, my library is so fortunate to have a budget that can pay people to do things that we want to give jobs to people. So while we appreciate our volunteers so much, and they do so many things for us, we're careful about what volunteers do versus what staff does. So in my community, we require people to live in Plymouth or Plymouth Township to be a volunteer in our library. We also require them to attend a volunteer training orientation. So we still have a couple hundred volunteers, which is awesome, but we have them do very specific activities. All right, let's talk about online presence. In adult services, we have people who contribute to our library webpage. They write book reviews, they put up program announcements, they post service updates, they give literacy tips. All of that they do on both our webpage, and they contribute to content in our social media. We have a social media team that includes 2 adult services staff. So I actually post for my library's Twitter and Instagram. We have another librarian whose title is the Digital Services and Emerging Technologies Librarian. She posts on Facebook. Those are the 3 major social media accounts that my library uses. We do have a YouTube channel, so any librarian can make a program video or a book talk or any kind of video that they want, and we'll post it on our YouTube channel. We don't get a lot of takers on that. I don't know if librarians in my staff just are not comfortable in front of a camera, but YouTube channel is a hard sell for my staff. Okay, let's talk about cords. This might seem like kind of a weird thing for adult services, but patrons are constantly looking to borrow charging cables and adapters. We actually have Ethernet ports available in our hardwired right into the tables in our library, so that if you're doing something that you don't want to use the wide open Wi-Fi network for, Ethernet's a little bit more secure. It's still a public network, so we do kind of warn people, if you're doing online banking, the Wi-Fi connection might not be your best choice. But we do give out cords, Ethernet cords. We give out HDMI cords so that people can attach their devices to the screens that we have in our meeting rooms and in our study rooms. We give out charging cables and adapters for any kind of thing you want. We've got one to offer. So we just hold their ID or their library card while they use the item in the library. We don't check them out, although I think that's a great idea to check out these kinds of things. And then they can charge their device while they're in the library. Charging stations are another great service that library can offer if you have the infrastructure. We have trouble finding outlets in places that make sense. We have some kind of random outlets in the floor, which is kind of weird, but we have trouble finding available outlets for things in our library. But if you have lots of outlets or building a new building, electrical outlets and USB ports are in high demand. The last thing I want to talk about is a philosophy that is very close to my heart, and that is customer service. Customer service is the #1 service you can provide, whether it's adult services, youth, teen, whatever. Customer service is crucial. It doesn't just being nice and friendly to people, although of course that's part of it. It means not letting policy and procedure get in the way of allowing patrons to do what they came to the library to do. They chose the library because they thought you could help them with whatever their need is. That's amazing, and that says so much about what people think the library can do for them. So even if it's not a service that you offer, or maybe it's a service you could offer. So if enough people ask for something, that means that a lot of people thought you could accommodate them. So maybe it's a thing that you should start offering. If you have to say no to something, in my library, we really want you to have a good reason to say no, that their request was unsafe, physically unsafe, or so unfair that a lot of other people would be burdened by it. Otherwise, we kind of think, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? What kind of compromise can we come to? If we have a policy that someone is asking us to break, and it's not unsafe, it's not unfair, if there's a compromise that we can come to, we always want to do that. So if you're afraid that if you allow it, everyone will want to do it, then it's probably a service that you should offer because everyone will use it. It's hard enough to get the community to understand what the library does. So we don't want to disappoint them by making them, learn what we can't do or figure out or decide that we can't do things, when really we probably could have accommodated at least some kind of compromise. And the answer, it's hard, or it would inconvenience staff, that's not good enough. We get paid to do a job, it's called work. It's not called happy fun time. We get paid to do a job. So if it's hard for us or inconvenient for us, we feel like that's kind of too bad. That's what we get paid to do. Of course, if it's unsafe, again, or just so unfair that so many people would be burdened by it, we cannot accommodate every request for every person. More often than not, we can come to a compromise. So we like to say yes whenever possible. So that's the end of this program. Hope you enjoyed learning about adult services and reading the chapter in your textbook. Thanks, everybody.